back to Lessons Learned. I'm Sherry and I'm here today with a super simple pattern. Once in a while I like to do a really simple pattern. I like more complicated things, not necessarily hard, but just patterns that are a little more piecey than this. But once in a while, yeah, I like to do a really simple pattern. Something quick, comes together in hours instead of weeks or months or years. And what's going to make this pattern true success is the fabric choice. And as you can see here, I have pulled from my stash some wonderful Tula Pink Moon Garden pieces. And this pattern is called Iron Gate, and it will finish at 72.5 by 72.5. And what you're going to need for this pattern and for this quilt project are 4 loud prints. So I have 2 prints here that are the same but very different in color, and then I have 2 more here of the birds, and then also you're going to need 1.5 yards of a light tone on tone or something very toned down to go next to your bold prints. You only need 1.5 yards, and you can use just one throughout the whole quilt. I am using 2 because I don't have 1.5 yards piece of any one print. So I'm going to split that equally between these 2 prints. And then you're also going to need 1/2 yard of a dark, and I suggest a black. And hopefully some of your prints will have a black that will be pulled out by these little black centers that we're going to have. So if not, use some other sort of dark that's in your prints, like a navy or even a dark burgundy or a dark green, anything of the sort. So black works really well. The name of the pattern is Iron Gate, so that's kind of why I'm using black. It kind of all came together that way in my head. So you're going to need 4.5 yards of backing fabric for this as well. Now what we're going to do is we're going to cut from each of these 4 bold prints. You're going to cut 4 width of strip fabrics out of each one of these that are 6.5, and then you will cut those 6.5 inch pieces down to 8 inches in length, and altogether you will have 32 of those 6.5 by 18 here out of your big prints. Out of your dark solid, you're going to need 4 3.5 inch strips from the width of fabric, and then subcut those into 16 rectangles. And then from your 1.5 yard of light, or your tone on tone, or your blender, or if you're using 2 different ones like me, you're going to need total 8 6.5 strips from the width of fabric. So in my case, I'll be doing 4 and 4, and then we will subcut those into 32 8-inch rectangles. So from the backing, once you get your top done, your backing will be the 4.5 yards cut in half and then sewn together. You'll wind up with this giant 81 by 90 more or less square, and then you can trim it down for basting and quilting and leaving extra on this on all sides of it. Now the block construction is going to go like this. Your black goes here, and then your blender or your light or your tone on tone are these. So your 2 bigger rectangles, your medium-sized rectangles I should say, will go on the top and bottom of each of your black smaller rectangles. And then once you've cut your 32 big prints down to your 6.5 by 18, you're going to have 1 on each side of this middle block that you've already assembled. And then that will become your block. You will sew all 3 of these together. Now we're not going to have them sitting side by side. We're going to turn these 90 degrees every other. So you'll have 16 blocks total, and those will be in a 4 by 4 grid, and then once you get all your blocks done, you can arrange them however you want, depending on, you know, how the colors are coming together. One thing I do know that doesn't look good is if these are of one print and then you have your other block going this way and it has the same print, it gives an odd angle there effect. I mean, you might like that if you were doing all solids or something more modern looking, but I felt that it looked a little odd with the prints. So that is how this is going to go together. So let's get started cutting up our fabric. Alright, so all of my fabrics are pressed. They've been in my stash for a while, so I have some pretty deep creases here, and I did steam it, but as time has gone on here, they have kind of come back. But I usually do steam my fabric once before I cut it, just to get it nice and flat so we can have accurate cutting. Now I have 2 of my prints here, and then I have 2 more that I'm going to cut this way, but I'll be cutting 4 6.5-inch width of fabric strips out of these. I am going to lay these 2 on top of each other and do 2 at a time. My natural fold is up here, so this is a width of fabric. I have also cut off my selvages because I save selvages, so I went ahead and cut those off before I start cutting for my project. So here we're going to take a wide ruler, a 6.5 if you have it. If you don't, just double up 2 rulers side by side until you have 6.5, and then by width of fabric here. So I'm going to go ahead, and I see that on my 6.5, and you want to check twice and cut once. So make sure, you know, if you have to like finger out what 6.5 is, do so, because once you've cut it a 1/2 inch short or something, it's over. So out of these 2 prints, I'm going to cut 4 each out of this. So they're stacked on top of each other, so I'm going to make 4 cuts. Okay, so I have about a 1/4 yard left over of each of these, and these can be used for our binding. Our next 2 prints, I'm going to line them up really nice at the top, and then I'm also going to get a nice straight baseline here on the left so that I can make nice accurate cuts. So I'm just going to make sure all my layers are to the left of a line just a tiny bit and square that off. And then I'll go ahead and cut my 6.5-inch strips from these 2 prints. So we have our 16 strips here that we need. Now we need to subcut these down into 18.5-inch pieces. So you can go ahead and from your open end, do your 18 inches over. Using your board or your ruler like this is preferable, because sometimes your boards aren't real accurate. So just make sure it's 18.5 inches long. So I'll do one here for you. So this is your width of fabric piece. Here's my fold. And so now we have our 18.5-inch pieces for each side of a block. Now don't worry that your birds are turned sideways if you have some sort of directional fabric, because we're going to be turning these blocks alternating 90 degrees. So, you know, you're going to get all sorts of different looking directions with this. If that's something that bothers you, you can cut your fabric on the length instead if you've got something like that. If it doesn't bother you, just follow what I'm doing here. So I'm going to go ahead and cut out all of the rest of my 18-inch pieces from these 16 strips. And I'll come back here in just a moment and show you how to do the tone-on-tone pieces. Alright, so now here we are with our tone-on-tone, or you might be using just a light solid, or you might be using just a very low volume fabric, something very contrasting to the busyness of our big squares, and also in contrast to our dark little middle strip that we're going to have. You'll be using 1.5 yards, and you'll cut again 6.5 inch strips, 8 of those. I'm using 2 different fabrics, so I'm just going to layer them on top of each other and cut 4 6.5 inch strips, just like we did on the first go around. And then once I get those cut, I'll show you how to subcut those into the smaller pieces for the middle section of our block. So you would normally have 8 of the 6.5 by width of fabric blocks. I happen to have 4 of 2 colors. That's the only difference. And you know, depending on the fabric that you're using, you may want to do something similar. So now we're going to cut these down into 8-inch rectangles, and we're going to need 32 of those. So I'm going to go ahead and cut those down, and I'll be right back here to show you how to cut down our little black rectangles for the center of the block. Okay, so we should have 32 blocks or rectangles that are 6.5 by 18.5, and 32 blocks that are 6.5 by 8 inches. So this is your big print, and this is your low volume print, or your light print as referred to in the pattern. There is a PDF that you can print out in the description box, so you not only have this video to refer to, you also have a printable pattern that you can print off. So now we need to do our black, and that's going to be super simple. We just have a 1/2 yard that we need for that. 18 inches. I didn't cut my selvages off on this one because I don't need plain black selvages. But anyway, we are going to cut these into 4 3.5 inch strips by width of fabric. So you want to go 3.5 on your ruler over here. This is width of fabric. My fold is down here. My selvage is up here. So 3.5 inches, and we're going to cut 4 strips. You probably don't really need a full 1/2 yard. If you're just using something out of your stash, you can measure 3.5 times 4 and just cut that much. So that's what I had left over. So now we're going to take our strips, and I'm just going to lay them right on top of each other and cut out our 8-inch rectangles. And we only need 16 of these, so half of what we have been cutting. So this is a stack of 2, 4, 6, 8. So we need to cut 2 times an 8-inch width, and I'm just going to make sure these are lined up nice so that they are accurate. I'm going to go from the selvage side and cut that selvage off. Get that up there where you can see it. Cut about a 1/2 inch off of that. Now we can measure our 8 inches. I'm going to use this ruler this time and just go to the 8-inch mark. Line that up. Actually, I could do it right in the middle so it's not wobbly. There's 8 inches and 8 more inches. We have this little bit left over. So now you have 16 of your centers that you need for your block. Now we get to show you how do these blocks go together. So simple. You just wait. Okay, so I hope you paid attention to my note on the last clip that these are supposed to be 6.5 inches wide, not 8. The pattern is correct. I just misspoke. Alright, so here's how they go together. So simple. Work on your middle part first. Add this side to this middle, and then this side to this middle. Iron those. Iron towards the dark. And then add your two sides on. So once you have this all together and ironed toward the center, just add your two side pieces and you have a nice big 18.5 inch block. I'm going to make a couple of these up and then I'm going to show you how to lay them in rows to be able to get the desired effect of this pattern. So here are my blocks, not stitched up yet, but I just was arranging them on the board. You just kind of have to move things around until they make sense to you, that they look right for you. This is not really my style of quilt. It's more like the 3-yard quilts that kind of make your eye fly off the side. But I did want to make something that the majority of people do like, and this is a very, very quick sew up. I would say less than 2 hours total, including the cutting on this one. And it really makes a big statement. So I have the whole thing together down here with some pins. My board is just not long enough, but I thought it turned out pretty cool. And you can't go wrong with Tula. And yes, some of the birds are upside down, but I don't think that matters. Her fabric is so fabulous that you don't really have to worry too much about the position of an object on the print. So I think it turned out really good. I'm going to go ahead and sew this up, and if you would like to watch my Finish It Friday episode this week coming up, tune in and you'll see this all stitched together. I would like to say I would have it quilted and bound, but I don't think I can promise you that. So this is called Iron Gate. The PDF pattern is downloadable and printable in the description box of this video. So feel free to use it and use up some of your stash and share it with friends. Alright, we'll see you soon. Bye.